good morning. Happy Tuesday, PASW staff, clients, and friends joining us. Okay, here's the deal. I moved, so this is going to be an adjustment for all of us. I'm still the same me. You'll see some classes where I'm in the old apartment, now I'm in a new house, and it's all for the better, but I just wanted to, I always like to be honest here. Honesty is a big part of being an artist and sharing with you guys. So I know I mentioned that we had to get our bearings, and I'm still getting them. And with the LA classes, because we reviewed those, I always say artists are very sensitive to their environment. So I include myself, of course, being very sensitive, but the point is that I'm here to give you 110% no matter where I am. And I hope you enjoy the new surroundings. My niece and nephew say they like my old place better, which doesn't make me feel that great, but they're kids, so that's okay. So hopefully you're still with me. We're still gonna be doing good work. I know yesterday it was a different environment, but we just need to move on. It's swing week, guys. We've waited all week for swing week because, like I said yesterday, it was heavy German expressionism, heavy German music. Romantic, but heavy. Can't think of a better word for that. That's just what it is. So yesterday we looked at Take the Money and Run, and your results are already in. They're looking terrific. You captured the scene. Of course, we that funny scene where he doesn't have his pants on and he comes back in. That is funny because of the music. It's funny regardless. But then we saw with Ralph Rosenblum using Dixieland, so that was your assignment. So if you still haven't done that, just get it into me by today. We're going to use a Dixieland piece for that segment. Again, with these film scoring things, if you take out the music, there's not much going on. Sometimes there's a gag, like yesterday. Sometimes it's just somebody walking. Sometimes somebody's on a motorcycle. But without that music to give us the feel, the audience is a little confused about how to feel. But with that music, oh, okay, we're supposed to laugh here. Oh, we're supposed to cry here. We're supposed to be scared here. But that was different than Italian music that we looked at with Nina Rota a long time ago. The Italians and foreign films, we're not going to have the music tell you what to do. Music's going to be an environment or just a background for something. More kind of casual listening sometimes. Less Hollywood. Hollywood will tell you because they want to sell tickets, this is what you're supposed to feel. And they do that really well, of course. Okay, so because of the Dixieland score, that we talked a little bit about that music. This is all swing week. We're going to swing and we're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to look at Glenn Miller today. We're going to revisit Glenn Miller that we looked at a long time ago. Glenn Miller, 2 N's, Glenn, because it was Alton. That was his first name, but it was Alton Glenn Miller. So he just went with Glenn because he was hip. This week, because of swing, it's the arrangements that we're talking about. Obviously, you need a good song, but then how do you arrange that song? And arrangement goes back to orchestration. You could say that the same way. Arrangers and orchestrators are the same. Arrangements usually means more with like popular music, jazz, big band music. Orchestration's more like classical music. Ravel and Debussy transformed orchestration. Mozart wasn't interested so much in orchestration. Mozart and Beethoven were very, it was just, okay, 2 horns, 4 horns, 4 violins, 6. It was very standard. It was more about the symphonic form, sonata form, all those things. Then 19th century, you get people like Ravel and Debussy, and then like Rimsky-Korsakov, where they're going to color the orchestra. So arrangers that we're going to see this week, Neil Hefti, Billy Strayhorn, these guys are going to work closely with the band leader. And so this week is swing music, but the band leader. Now, if we think of comedy and music and swing music and comedy and timing, we always like to do that. And we'll do another week of, the Marx Brothers and Mel Blanc. And I mentioned this a lot, but we have to review it because most of learning is repetition. So it's the timing, but also it's a little bit, because I was thinking as I'm watching all these classes, Glenn Miller, and then we're going to look at Count Basie, then we're going to look at Duke Ellington. That's going to be our week. So it's going to be a very fun week. Those guys are masterful instrumentalists, trombone with Glenn, piano and with Count and Duke. But they have the arrangers, and this is similar to comedians. Bob Hope, Jack Benny, even Jimmy Fallon and Howard Stern. Those guys are the personalities. They have immense talent, but they rely on writers. So it's the same as band leaders relying on arrangers. So everyone's doing their own part, but you really need to give a shout out to the arrangers and the writers, because without those guys, the performers, not that they couldn't do it on their own, but I don't know if, it's hard in show business to do everything on your own. Jimmy Fallon couldn't write every joke for The Tonight Show. It would be impossible. Johnny Carson didn't do that. Nobody did that. So you start doing it on your own, then you acquire a style. We're going to talk about style later, because style is repeating something over and over until the audience says, oh, well, you do that all the time, that's your style. Everyone has their own style. So that's kind of it. Okay, let's get just right into Glenn Miller. Everyone's heard In the Mood, right? That's his most famous song that he didn't write. He really didn't write any of his songs except Moonlight Serenade, which is no small thing, because that's probably one of the greatest songs ever written. But we're going to look at Alton Glenn Miller. It's a good thing he got rid of Alton, because Alton Miller is not as great as Glenn with two N's. We'll talk about his life, a little bit about his disappearance, because he died young, and mostly what we're here about is to do why are we talking about him? What did he do differently? We're going to find out what he did different, and it involves a clarinet. Yes, it's going to be a very exciting class using understanding his use of the clarinet. So yeah, Glenn Miller.
Chattanooga choo-choo, run it down again. Let's go. 1, 2.
So born 1904, dies in 1944, lives till 40. American big band leader. Trombone was his main instrument, arranger, composer, and leader of the swing era. So mostly from 1939 to 1942, he did all of his hits, and he was as famous as the Beatles. I mean, he was the biggest person. Everyone knew Glenn Miller. Everyone knew his songs, his repertoire. Everyone knew that. So let's leave Paris, because that's where we were with Saint-Saëns, and let's go to something just as beautiful as Paris, Iowa. He's born in Iowa. He and then attended grade school in western Nebraska. Moves to Missouri, and he starts finally making enough money milking cows, which is how I started my early, my first job, milking cows, to buy his first trombone. This is when and so now he can play trombone in the town orchestra. This sounds so small townish, but it really is if you think of Iowa or even America in the 1915s, early 1920s. He plays cornet and mandolin, but really switches to trombone by 1916. And his senior year, he becomes interested in dance music, dance band music. And so after he graduates in 1921, he decides he wants to become not a doctor or a lawyer, but a professional musician. So if he's into dance band music, what music is going on in 1920s? Some of it we looked at. I mean, Duke Ellington's getting his sound in the 20s, but I mean, he's still only 21. He's born in 1899, so only a few years before Glenn Miller. But we have Louis Armstrong. We have Dixieland music going on. We have Fats Waller, who we looked at a few weeks ago. His music is going on in the 20s. And then with guys like Benny Goodman and Tommy Dorsey, who we've talked about and haven't done classes on, they are saying, wow, we can get a lot of attention, female attention, any kind of attention from people that want to have a good time. And this is during the 20s, during Prohibition, when alcohol's not around. I mean, it's around, but how can people have a good time? Well, they want to get up, and there's no TV, there's radio, but they want to go out and they want to dance. And dancing is still fun. Dancing is something that we still do today. I don't do today, but I mean, people, supposedly it's supposed to be fun. And so that's what's music. And a lot of these songs are written by George Gershwin. Gershwin's a songwriter. He didn't have a big band, as we remember. He wrote songs, so they would do arrangements of his songs. So that's what's going on in the 20s. That's what Glenn Miller and his other friends, the Dorsey brothers, are looking at. He studies music theory, and around this time writes Moonlight Serenade, which we'll look at and listen to later. So he wrote that pretty early on, before he even knew what he was going to be doing. And toward the late 20s, he's playing in gigs, he's playing in bands all around town. He starts realizing maybe his strength is in arranging music and writing music, because there were a lot of bands going on in the 20s, just like there are a lot of bands today. And then you think of, well, how can my band stick out? So 1928, he goes to New York City, and he marries his college sweetheart, Helen Berger. And kind of in the 30s, he's working still as a freelance player, playing in several bands, touring, doing all these things, and working as a trombonist and also as an arranger for the Dorsey brothers. Tommy and Jimmy Dorsey were very famous as well, but they were kind of growing up with him and establishing their own. It's funny because Tommy Dorsey was a trombonist as well as Glenn Miller. So you think of trombone not being as popular perhaps today, but back then you could lead a band, as the trombonist. In 1935, he assembles a few people under Ray Noble. Ray Noble is most famous in my mind for writing one of the best songs, "The Very Thought of You," but he also had his own band. Glenn Miller's a little bit disillusioned because he's just one of these guys, and if he has a band, they all have a band, like we talked about. They're all playing the same songs. How is he going to have his sound? Sound is really what we're going to be paying attention to today. Because if you have a George Gershwin song and you have an arrangement, it's almost like, okay, we can play the arrangement and that's fine and people are dancing. But how do you elevate that? How do you get to, what he was after was, how do I get my band to sound like no other bands going on? Which is a tricky part. How does any artist do, because everyone's, and we're surrounded by so many artists and influences, but what makes an artist special? Their style, their sound. So what he's going to do, it's not the first to do this, but one of the first, is he's going to use a clarinet, okay? That sounds really scandalous, right? Probably the most famous thing we've heard on the clarinet is 1924 Rhapsody in Blue by George Gershwin. He uses the clarinet, but that's not, Rhapsody in Blue is a classical jazz piece. Glenn Miller has nothing to do with classical music. He's not really interested in classical music. He's interested in getting people dancing to his music. So what he's going to do is he's going to say, and there's a famous Hollywood scene where the trumpet player bursts his lip, and this is probably not real at all. And so they have a big gig, and the trumpet player can't play, and Glenn Miller says, Jimmy Stewart is like, well, we can use a clarinet instead of a trumpet. So because, and this happened in real life, not the exact circumstances, but he said, if we use a clarinet with the saxophones, that's going to give us a different sound.
Hey, just a minute, I have an idea. Hey, Willie Schwartz could play those parts on clarinet. Why not? Huh? You see, clarinet lead? Why not? Don, get me a whole lot of manuscript paper. Can you use your office, Si?
Sure.
Clarinet lead, sure. Why not? And Don, call Helen, tell her not to worry, huh? Tell her I'm going to be working here all night.
All right.
Clarinet lead. And I can harmonize it real tight, all in the same octave.
4 saxes and a clarinet. He better stay up all night.
Usually there's 4 to 5 saxophones in a big band. Still, there's 2 tenors, 2 alto saxophones, usually a baritone sax. So he's not going to use a baritone. He's going to have his 5th one playing clarinet on top of these saxophones. This is going to create a whole different sound. It's interesting how something as simple as just adding one instrument can change the color of the whole orchestra, the whole big band. And that's how he got his sound. And the clarinet is playing the same thing. So usually the saxophones are playing the melody and then there's harmony. And usually the lead tenor is playing the melody. So he's saying, let's have the clarinet play that melody an octave higher. So they're playing the same notes, but it's not at the same register. It's an octave higher. So there's harmony with the saxophones, melody line, and then clarinet melody line doubling. And that's going to give Glenn Miller his sound. It adds brightness. It adds a very, it's very colorful, and it starts taking off as that's the Glenn Miller sound. That clarinet is, and like I said, other people are using this technique, but he's really, I mean, he's touring and working so hard, and also having great songs. You need great songs too, right? So by 1939, he's really got what he's after with Moonlight Serenade. If you hear it, I mean, it's such a gorgeous song. If you listen to it, what's a little bit different about it? It doesn't sound anything like In the Mood. I mean, obviously it's a slower paced song. It's a ballad. It's one of the most romantic, beautiful songs I've ever heard. He's got muted brass. So brass instruments, you can use a mute. And what does that do? It does exactly what it sounds like. It dampens. He's going to attempt to modernize military music in a way that's fun, in a way that's big band music, in a way where it's not just boring military music. He's going to make the military band swing. So he had to fly. He didn't have to fly. He shouldn't have flown in a small engine, leaving from the town of Bedford to the United Kingdom to Paris. On December 15th, 1944, and this is, he's going to meet his band, but it's a single engine, and it disappears. They still have not found it. It disappeared while flying over the English Channel, which is not huge, and this is, so he's doing all these great efforts for the war, but he ends up disappearing, probably in bad weather, and it probably crashed in the English after the fuel tanks froze. So it was probably instant, which is good, but it was probably it was probably because it was frozen, and no trace of it was ever discovered. There's different stories that I was reading where, you know, there's different conspiracy theories whether he was shot down, but I think it was just bad weather and they were flying low, and you know, it was cold, and it was unfortunate because I think, according to records, they weren't, you know, they were not even allowed or encouraged to do this at this point, but he wanted to make the gig. They announced his disappearance on Christmas Eve, which is really sad. And in 1953, you get Universal Pictures does the Glenn Miller story, and that's what we've been looking a little bit at with James Stewart. So he had a staff of arrangers who also wrote and arranged the song Too Young. So that's kind of too bad, but at least, you know, he's still talked about today, and In the Mood always puts people in the mood for dancing and having a good time. So I hope you enjoyed that. I mean, Glenn is the best. Famous as the Beatles, as I said. I mean, that's how everybody knew Glenn Miller's music. Dance band, but romantic dance music. This is something different than Count Basie and Duke. They're not going to be romantic dance music. We'll see what they're going to be later this week as we recap. It was also good timing. People wanted to have a good time with Prohibition and the war, most importantly, with low morale. And it's too bad because Glenn Miller, just like Amelia Earhart that we mentioned going on in the 30s, same as Ritchie Valens with the plane and the early death because of bad weather, a small engine. So that's really too bad about Glenn Miller. But he kind of used his small town dance band from Iowa. Who else was from Iowa? Meredith Willson, who wrote the Music Band. His whole life work, the Music Band, was based on his upbringing in Iowa. So I was just kind of juxtaposing Glenn Miller and Meredith Willson, where what was dance band music like in Iowa, and how did these guys, transcend it in some way? And we talked about they used a lot of Gershwin songs because Gershwin didn't have his own band. He was a composer, a songwriter, and composer. Because Rhapsody in Blue is a composition, and I Got Rhythm is a song. So, and those are both Gershwin songs. So they were using, and we'll see, they were using Gershwin songs, Jerome Kern songs, and using their orchestrators, their arrangers to give them that sound. And like we talked about with Glenn Miller, the clarinet was a big, that's how he had his own sound. And clarinet adds brightness and color, like we just said, and also the muted horn. So he's using his big band like an orchestra, maybe like Strauss would use his orchestra in some ways. All the composers, even Wagner had his own orchestra, but they're using it with jazz-like music, rhythms, blues. But it's about the arrangement, right? So muted instruments, muted strings, clarinets, different instruments, that's a different color. That's going to give you your own style. So that's what, and all these guys, but right now we're just on Glenn Miller, had his own unique style. So I hope you enjoyed revisiting Glenn Miller with me. It's a lot of fun watching these old classes. They're still new, but just revisiting. So tomorrow, Count Basie, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So can't wait to share that with you. Have a great rest of the day. Thanks for being here with me in my new place, and love you, and see you tomorrow. Okay, bye.